first tournament I won was at 14. Then I became the second sponsored American fighting game player. At this point, I was like thinking, did I get kidnapped? In 2008, I was actually thinking about retiring. I literally get a DM. They're like, hey, we want to sign you. We will give you $12,000 a month.
If this guy's talking shit, tell him the money match for any amount of money.
It was also the first time I heard the crowd cheer for me. I'm used to people booing me.
Depending on your definition of what counts as an EVO title, Justin Wong holds either 8 or 9 championships, and by any definition you choose, he has the most. While there is no debate regarding Justin Wong being the greatest Marvel vs. Capcom 2 player of all time, his accolades span countless titles and iterations in the world of fighting games. If there was a tournament to be found for a fighting game, Justin Wong would find a way to win.
So I learned how to play the game literally like 2 days before. Who's the best character? What's the meta? And I won.
A champion competitor, successful content creator, host, and commentator, many may look at Justin's illustrious career today and assume that he was destined to be a professional fighting game player. But when Justin began, the concept of a professional player had not yet even been conceived.
The first time I won a tournament, they gave me $50 worth of Funtime USA tokens.
In this episode of Trash Talk, I sit down with Justin Wong to discuss his foundational years in the world of fighting games, how playing these games professionally eventually became a real possibility, a detailed inside look at the business of being a pro fighting game player, numbers and all, and what's next for Justin Wong and the fighting game community as a whole. Please enjoy. Well, hey there, we're going to get right back to Justin Wong and discussing his fighting game journey. But before we do that, I wanted to present you guys with a great opportunity and thank the sponsor of this episode of Trash Talk, Tesseract. Tesseract is actually launching their new Hypercube Pro leverless controller. This thing has a very compact profile, so it's ultra portable. You will always have room for it in your backpack to take it on the go. But the main thing that I enjoy about it, despite how portable it is that this thing is built like a tank. This thing is just under 2 pounds, which doesn't sound like a lot on paper, but when you pick it up and put it on your lap to play, it has some heft to it. Old heads like myself can probably relate to that feeling of having like a cheap plastic arcade stick with very little body weight to it on your lap, and it just feels terrible. And a lot of leverless controllers, I think of the portable size, tend to feel a little lightweight as well, but this thing solves that problem entirely. And for Street Fighter 6 players, this layout is very forward thinking. I personally now use the right thumb button as a parry macro, and I instantly saw my success rate for parry skyrocket. And maybe one day I'll use DI with my pinky. One day. And if you're interested in this controller at all, Tesseract has partnered up with Trash Talk to give one of you guys one for free. Just head to the description for this episode on either YouTube or Spotify for a chance to win one of these bad boys entirely free of charge. And along with the giveaway, we have an exclusive discount with coupon code Trash Talk at checkout for $30 off your next order. Thanks again to Tesseract for sponsoring this episode of Trash Talk, and back to the discussion with Justin. Justin Wong, okay, 8, maybe 9-time EVO champion. We'll get into the debate about the number of titles soon. Possessor of the Wong factor, possibly the first ever American professional fighting game player, content creator and influencer megastar, and now EVO finalist commentator, and to many, the GOAT of fighting games, period. How you doing, Justin?
I'm doing good, Brian. I gotta correct you. I'm not the first American professional fighting game player.
Okay, let me know.
I wasn't the first. It was actually Marn. Marn was on Evil Geniuses 1 month before I joined because I was on a reality show. So nobody could contact me for 6 weeks. So literally frame one, once I got out, they're like, yo, I got a meeting with you and Alex Garfield, who was the owner of Evil Geniuses, like frame one. And then I became the second sponsored American fighting game player. Yeah, that's how it started.
Were you first on the list, but they just couldn't reach you? Or like, what do you guys debate about that?
We never talked about it, but like I wasn't there when he went to Devastation. He won the tournament as like okay, he just got signed and everything. Like I was literally off the grid, no internet, nothing. So maybe they were contacting me. I never asked. I at that time I was like, what? They trying to pay me to wear a shirt instead of like joining like a clan or a friend team, stuff like that, right? Like an EMP or a DMG, like. I didn't know that was a thing. So it was like, I was like, yeah, sure, no problem, right?
Interesting. Yeah, I guess the concept of a professional gamer wasn't really ironed out at that time, because to me, you have always been a pro gamer, right? I'm an 09er, but more like a 2010er, right? By the time I started to digest and understand what the FGC was, It was around 2010, and I saw you guys get signed in that era. I saw those tournaments occur. Those were like my first ever broadcasted tournaments that I actually watched live post that 2009 Evo. So I was like, oh yeah, these guys are they're pros. Like, this is their job.
They're pros.
they get a salary. They live a normal life. And it wasn't until like over the years that I retroactively pieced together what life was like for pro fighting game players. And I started to realize, like, oh, this isn't that, it's not as glamorous as it looks at first.
No, it looks like it from the perspective of the people wearing jerseys. It looks all professional, but a lot of times people were getting, like contracts. Like, they're like, hey, we'll give you a shirt and you can rep our team, and maybe sometimes we'll pay for your entry fee or send you a flight, or you gotta spend hotel rooms with like 10 other people. That was very common from the start of during the sponsorship days.
Interesting. Yeah. And even before that, so you've witnessed every era of fighting game esports from its inception to where it's gone today. And even before that era of even someone trying to give you a crappy sponsorship and just put their name on a shirt and put it on your back and throw you to a hotel room with 10 people, you were on the grind making money back before the concept of making money from video games was even a thing, right? So I know you've been interviewed to death about a lot of your history. So I do want to go into some of it and maybe get some of the sides that we haven't heard too much about. But as far as your origins in the arcades, when was the first time you realized that beyond just beating up people twice their age in arcades and spending your time after school there, that there was a potential to start winning money and getting a return on investment with your time there?
So the first tournament I ever played in was called East Coast Championship 5. It was at the break, 8 on the break, and Marvel 2 was officially out, but all the characters weren't unlocked yet. So they didn't run a Marvel 2 tournament. They ran like everything else, like Third Strike, Marvel 1, Alpha 3, ST. And I got 5th place at that tournament. Over like 400 people showed up across the East Coast, Northeast Coast, even people from Florida. Alex Valle and John Choi came out to this tournament as well too. And I didn't know who they were at the time. And I lost to literally in New York. I lost to the people that I lose to at the arcade. I lost to Eddie Lee, Henry Sen, Arturo Sanchez. Those are the literally 3 people I lost to that tournament. And ever since that tournament, I was like, man, I want to go to more tournaments. I want to experience it. And this is before I had like a taste of, I could win money. I didn't have a taste of money. There was no top 8 payouts at the time. They were like, hey, you got 5th place. That was pretty good, man. Good job. The first time I won a tournament with money, I guess not money on the line. It was just like arcade called Funtime USA in the ghetto in Brooklyn. Random arcade, and I beat a top New York City Marvel 2 player that was considered top tier in the Chinatown Fair, and they gave me $50 worth of Funtime USA tokens. That was my first time ever winning anything. So I'm like, well, this is not real cash. What do I do with this, right? So I brought back the tokens with me because I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to Chinatown Fair. And I tried the Funtime USA token in the Chinatown Fair arcade, and it worked. It registered. So because they didn't figure out like how to change how tokens work. If you put a quarter in it, the machine will spit out the quarter. But if you put some type of fake token in that's not Chinatown Fair, it still worked. So I started selling these Funtime USA tokens. 5 tokens for $1.
Wow.
So once I sold all my tokens away after winning that tournament, I was like, wow, I can win some cool prizes and maybe make some money from it. So that's kind of what got me started into playing more tournaments. And anytime there was a tournament like in the local, like in Queens or Brooklyn or even New Jersey, I went to all of them because they were really fun. I guess I didn't think too much about the money aspect. It was more of like, I want to play different people. I want to play people that I don't fight regularly. And I would say that was more of my thing versus the money thing. I think the money thing came later when I became more established, probably like year 2, year 3.
But would you say that stoked your like entrepreneurial spirit a little bit? Because I didn't know that part of your story, that you actually took the tokens to sell them for a return. And I'm assuming this is like when you're what, like 15, 16? Because you started winning these tournaments or doing well at them very young, right?
So I won B5 at 15 years old,
Right.
but the first term I won was at 14,
Okay.
right? And then there was this, I guess, the time when people realized who I was before I won like B5, and I guess that year they had this tournament in Virginia called Game Time. And Game Time was a tournament that a lot of New York players, I want to, I don't, this might sound mean, but they farmed them. Yeah,
Mm.
they every time they have their monthly, they farmed them because they had so many players come out, and the payout was pretty huge for during that time. It was like if you win Marvel 2, you get like $400. If you win CVS 1, you get another $400. If you win Third Strike, you get another $400. So if you're like a multi-fighting game player that's nasty everything, like you could win close to like $2,000 just cashing out. Because everybody just showed up to that tournament and everybody played. They just wanted to get better at $10 entry fee. So it was a long tournament. So I went to that tournament at 14 years old, and the problem though was that I did not know the tournament was in Virginia. Some dude was like, "Hey man, I want to take you to this tournament, and I think you'll do really good, kid." So I was like, "Sure. How far is it?" And they're like, "Oh, it's just we're gonna I'll drive you there. It'll take a few hours." And I was like, "Okay, cool." I'd done this whole lie to my parents and go to New Jersey thing.
Mm.
I didn't know in the map where was Virginia, so I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll go." I took a nap in the car, wake up, it's dark outside, and I'm like, "Why are we not turn me yet? There's traffic. There's so much traffic." And at this point, I was like thinking, "Did I get kidnapped?" Because there was no cell phones back in the
Right.
day. Like I guess maybe there was, but I couldn't afford it. I had a beeper, so I had to call like my dad. I'm telling him, "Hey man, I'm not gonna come home tonight. I'm gonna be staying at my friend's house in New Jersey." He was pissed, right? I already knew what was gonna happen when I get home, regardless. He was pissed. I was like, "Oh yeah, I can't get home. I don't have enough money to take the train, so I have to wait for the parents to drive me back home." That's kind of like that's a sad excuse I gave them. But when we finally showed up to this tournament in Virginia, game time, it was like 9 p.m. and they waited for me. This was like the first time I experienced
Wow.
player privilege, but I wasn't even a top player, right? They waited for me because I guess this guy Alex was like, "Yo, this kid is good. Trust me, you want to wait for him, blah blah." But they got to the point where they couldn't move forward to the tournament, so they put me in losers bracket in both games. So I showed up. Finally, it was like I think 9 p.m. I showed up, and I had to play both Marvel 2 and CVS 1, starting from round one losers, and I made it all the way to grand finals, and I won the tournament, right? And that's when Shoryuken.com wrote an article about me. Like, I think the title was like Wonder Kid from Chinatown Fair destroys everybody in Virginia. Some type of line like that, right? But the crazy part was I won like $800. That's like, wow, that was really cool. That was the first time I tasted real money at 14 years old, winning $800 in one night. That's like something big. But the problem was that after I won the tournament, I was like, all right, it's time to go home now. But Alex was like, the car broke down. So
Mm.
I gotta fix the car. And then you can't get home until Tuesday. So I'm like, oh hell no, right? I'm still in like yeah, freshman year of high school. So I was like, I can't just not go to school and stay in Virginia for 2 days. And at this point, my dad is gonna just lose his shit at this point, right? So I took the Greyhound from Virginia to New York, and I got back New York at 5 a.m. And I had to take it by myself at 14 years old. There was no like I guess checking ages back in the
Mm.
day for flights or buses. So they let me just take the bus just straight solo. It's weird because it's my first time taking a bus like from that far by myself. So I was a little worried. I was scared. But I got home safely, and then yeah, I got my ass beat afterwards. But hey, I mean, I came out $800 richer that day, so I guess that was kind of worth it. And from there, I wanted to just go on to more tournaments, more tournaments, more tournaments. So yeah, I think that's what really started the, that ROI really paid off from starting from that day.
Mm. How much of your prize winnings went into that Greyhound bus ticket? How much survived having to pay that trip back?
It was a one-way bus ticket, so I believe it was only like $40-$50
Okay.
because I mean buses are cheap.
Right. And Before, I do want to mention the bus era a little bit. I did have some questions about that specifically, but with this specific instance, did you explain to your dad at all what you were up to? Like, I understand he was pissed. You got, probably rightfully reprimanded a little bit.
I got slapped up a little bit. It was a different era back in the day. You feel me?
Different era. Also, you kind of almost volunteered yourself to get kidnapped across state lines. There might have been some felonies along the way. I don't know. That sounds that can't be legal. Whatever just transpired, I don't think was totally kosher in the eyes of the law either. So I understand being pissed in that moment for your safety, if anything. But did you try to soften the blow a little bit? Like, did you go, hey, I went to this tournament, I won, I made this much money? Or was this something you still kept like hush hush? I wonder what that relationship was like at this time. Was this kind of like your secret hustle at the time, or were your parents aware of this? Like, how was that relationship like?
It was very secretive. They didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know where I was going. I used the excuse of, hey, I'm going to go stay at my friend's house in New Jersey for years. Literally years.
Did you specify the friend? Did the friend have a name?
They never asked. They never asked, like, hey, can I talk to your parents?
That friend.
Yeah. Like, I grew up in a family where we didn't really have the closest relationships. So we didn't ask anything. We didn't ask specifics. Like, that's kind of it. Like, as long as you're come home at this time, you go to school, you do your, you stay out of trouble, then that's kind of like what Asian parents back in the day asked for. But for the most part, they didn't know about me playing in tournaments since 2001. I think the first time they figured out that I was like doing this gaming thing and I've been doing it for years was they found out by accident, where they were watching cable TV and they just saw me on the World Cyber Games Ultimate Gamer Show. And that was in 2010. So for 10 years, yeah, I swear to God, for 10 years, they didn't know I was this pseudo professional gamer that was traveling around the world and playing in video game tournaments, because dude, cell phones didn't exist. There was no way for you to find out what I was doing. The internet didn't really existed. So, and when it did, it's not like they know what shoryuken.com is. So there's no YouTube, there's no Twitch. So it's hard to know what somebody's up to during that time frame, right? No social media for them to check. And they found out by accident because they just were flipping the channel. They saw me on the Sci-Fi channel. And that's kind of when they called me like, hey, I just saw you on the show and they said you've been playing video games competitively for all these years and you won tournaments and blah, blah, blah. How come you never told us? And I told him straight up. I told my dad straight up, because you would say no and you would not let me go. So I just chose it on my own accord that I would do it, very sneakily, very sneaky. And as long as I'm not taking money from your pocket and I'm not doing anything that's hurting the family, I feel like it's not a bad thing. Maybe the line part's bad, but everything else in terms of the financial department, it was just me making money by myself. And they thought that all the time that when I didn't ask for money, it's because I was working at Circus City or Dave & Buster's at the time. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But, I was doubling up with these tournaments when I'm traveling to.
Interesting. I knew they didn't know for a while. I had no clue it was not until 2010. Because by that time, like, I remember that reality show. And by that time, you were known. Like, this was because 2009 occurred. That's the Street Fighter 4 era where everything exploded in the FGC. That's when I got into the fold. And people who were outside of the core, like, you didn't have to go to shoryuken.com to know who Justin Wong was at the time. Maybe in event hubs, but it was slowly breaking that containment.
It was. Yeah.
So to hear that it was cable TV that is what reached them, that's fascinating, because I had to have imagined there must have been questions at this time, because I mean, in high school you started traveling all this time. Like, were you thinking already at that early age, like, this might be a career option for me? Like, how was that, like, leading through your education, about to graduate high school? Like, where was your mind at? Because you said you were working like Dave & Buster's and other jobs on the side, but was this something that you were like, I'm going to make this happen? Were the ideas of being a professional gamer reality, or is this kind of like a day-by-day side hustle, just get by and make do what I can situation?
Yeah, I would say it was a day-by-day side hustle thing, just because, like, I would work like Circuit City at the time, and then moved to Dave and Buster's. And I would also be going to school, finish high school, then do community college. And the whole time, I'm just like, okay, if I have a free weekend, I can go to this tournament. And it's not like, okay, during the Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5 era, there was majors like every week, right? You remember that? There was just majors every
Mm.
week. Every week you're traveling to something. There wasn't like that during that time. It was only like ECC, final round, Midwest Championships, and Evo. So 4 tournaments a year, and then random like Virginia monthlies or random like Big E tournaments like NEC Winter Ball started coming up as well too. But there wasn't like a lot of tournaments. And because of that, it was actually more doable because I'm like, it's easier to take time off from like work, or I can like miss a day of school. So it wasn't like every single week there was a major tournament with qualifiers on the line. So I guess I didn't. There was no way I was thinking at the time I'm gonna be a professional fighting game player, and this is where I'm gonna just like make like all the money and become successful. None of that was happening. In 2008, I was actually thinking about retiring,
Mm.
and this was actually what most people in were also thinking at the same time, because 2006 2007 Evo was had their sponsorship with Toyota, where like first place is $5,000, and we are all losing our shit. $5,000, oh my god, for winning a tournament. 2008 happened. There was no more Toyota sponsorship. They kind of just lost it, and it became kind of like, yeah, the numbers are all time low. Nobody's coming to the tournament. No new fighting games are coming out. And then Seth Killian, he actually texted me. He's like, "Hey, you coming to this Evo?" And I was like, "No, I'm not, man. Like, it doesn't look too good. I feel like if I go, even if I win Marvel, I would not win. I would only barely break even." That's what I told him
Right.
straight up, right? And he said, "Well, I can't tell you, but you should come to this Evo, and it'll be really good because it might help, like, for the future of the direction of the FGC." So I took the gamble, I took the risk, I went to Evo, and that's when they announced Street Fighter 4. And they had the Street Fighter 4
Mm.
exhibition and everything like that. At the time, I did not know what to think about it. I'm just like, oh, okay, it's cool. It's a new fighting game, right? That's just how I was thinking about. The last time a new fighting game came out for the FGC during that time frame, it just failed. Capcom Fighting Jam. Everybody just shit on the game, and it just did horribly, right? I won Marvel 2 that year. I broke even. And then that's when all these advertisements of Street Fighter 4 started popping out with like GameStop and like how big it blew up. And that's kind of when I thought, oh, wait, hold on. I could maybe do something with this, right? Maybe I could go to more tournaments. I can travel a lot more. But I didn't think about how big it was going to be from the social media perspective or the streaming perspective. Like, still, I was like, a little fledgling, thinking about how am I going to get the next food? How am I going to eat for the next winter? Right? That literally day by day, um, winning a tournament, going to my job, going to school. It still never changed for me until I would say 2010 when I got sponsored by Evo Geniuses. But even during 2009, just experiencing Street Fighter 4 at its biggest, I was still thinking like, what am I gonna do still? Okay, cool.
Mm.
I'm going to more tournaments. I'm winning like a few more bucks. I would say like I guess Street Fighter 4 did pay out well because winning final round for Street Fighter 4, that was like I think like $2,200 around there, while winning Marvel 2 and Third Strike is like $300-$400. That was kind of like the amount that you would get. And even at the highest attendance for Marvel 2 and Third Strike, only for Evo you would get into thousands because everybody goes there, right? But
Right.
at a major tournament like a final round or ECC, you barely make over like $500-$600 for first place.
Yeah, and for people who don't know how the pricing structure works at these tournaments, it's all based on the number of players who enter, right? So players pay
Yep.
the entry fee to go to the event, and then you put into the pot itself to enter the actual individual game tournament like $10, which has been the same price for 2 decades at this point, which is wild.
Yeah.
And so it's completely correlated to the number of players who enter. So more players, there's more money to win from. and that has been
But you have to
pretty much unchanged.
But you have to think about this, right? But you have to think about this. There was no Start GG or Challenge back in the day. You pre-registered when you show up to the tournament, so nobody would know who's showing up to the tournament until like the day before. You could spend all this money of going to like flights, your hotels. You split with your friends. And you show up to your Third Strike tournament, Marvel 2 tournament, and only like 40 players showed up, right? And then if you win the tournament, you get 70% of that $400. The only way you could tell how poppin' a tournament is how many pages it has on the Shuriken.com forums. If it's like a 2-page, 3-page, and I'm like, oh, this is a major tournament, it's gonna be a bust. But if it's like 10-page plus, then you know everybody's gonna show up. So that's how we were gauging how many people are gonna show up to a tournament. And that's
you were saying like the actual thread discussing about the tournament. So people were hyped and talking about it. That's how you judge the buzz around a tournament. Was the thread for the tournament. Interesting.
Exactly. That's how I decided which tournaments to travel to.
There's a whole meta behind that as well, because I got to see the tail end of this farming era, right? It was not national or international as it is right now, where everyone's connected. It was regions were connected. So you can kind of get more of an idea of within a region what was happening, what was buzzing, but there was still this this mystique, or you weren't exactly sure where all the events or tournaments were happening. And there was still that bus era, right? Even Automatic had a recent tweet, which is very timely. He brought up Jippo. Man, Justin Wong really used to get on a bus, show up to a city, and beat everybody from that state in their favorite fighting games. And from what I hear, because I didn't partake in that too much, I just went to the big ones in Florida. The ideal situation was there'd be a tournament with a large prize pool, and it was usually thrown by some kind of organization or store or some kind of organizer who wasn't firmly connected with the FGC, so it kind of did not follow maybe the exact rule set, or didn't have the same exposure on like a Shoryuken forum or a Facebook group, so it was less known, and they would often put up more money than the known events, and you would try to go to those events and not tell anybody to make sure that it's more of a guaranteed win. And that was like the most profitable, like most return for least amount of effort strategy for top players at that time to do. Was that something that you were partaking in?
I only did that one time, and that was in a tournament in Brooklyn called Bulletproof Comics, and they were running a Marvel's Capcom 2. It was posted on Facebook. They're like $500 for first place, and it's local to me, so I'm like, okay, it's a $2 train ride, and I just go there, and I'm not gonna tell anybody, right? But the funniest part is when you go to these tournaments and you see somebody, you're like, oh, you know what you're doing, that type of thing, because they didn't talk about it at all. And and literally, I talked to this person the day before, and they didn't tell me that they're going to a tournament, right? But I would say for me, if you're running more than 8 games at your monthly, then I will probably be there, because then my goal is to win literally every tournament on the list. So I think like the one that Jibbo was talking about in particular, because he was from North Carolina, there was a North Carolina tournament, right? They ran Marvel 2, Third Strike, CVS 2, ST, a bunch of other games. And the one thing that stood out to me was every game was $10 entry fee, 70% payout. But then they had the special one where I guess North Carolina is very famous for playing a game called Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. Right? Nobody in that time frame, like that era, nobody in America was playing that game except for North Carolina. And they were saying that, oh, if whoever wins this tournament gets like an additional $500, right? And the top 2 players in the tournament will not enter. You will enter into a secret boss battle after you win the tournament, where if you win one game, you get $100. If you beat them in the set, you get the extra $200. So I'm like, oh, so you're telling me I could win $900 for a Neo Geo Battle Coliseum tournament because they're so confident that they're the best at it because nobody plays the game? So I learned how to play the game literally like 2 days before. I looked on the Shoryuken.com forums, who's the best character, what's the meta, and it was like Kim and Mr. Big. Right? It was a 2v2 game. So I learned how to play the game. I went down to North Carolina. I won all the Capcom games, and I played in that Neo Geo Battle Coliseum tournament. And I won, right? I won the tournament, so I got an extra $500. Then I fought the secret boss battles, and then I beat both of the players that they had there. So I caked out hard that North Carolina tournament. But yeah, I would say that's kind of what Jibbo's tweet reminded me of, was that tournament in particular.
That's so interesting. It really speaks to the difference in the era of the pre-internet, pre-international, and pre-tour competitive era, because we were all so isolated and it was so hard to gauge who was actually good at anything. The world was so much bigger back then, and we did not know anything. Like, we didn't
We
know
didn't know
how to
anything, yeah,
we didn't
for
know how to
sure.
play the games. We didn't know who was good. We didn't know where the good players were. The games were less explored. And so just like that's like a microcosm right there, where those two players were seen as gods of the games. You spend 2 days, you learn it, and you destroy their whole reality. Right now we have tours that literally rank you globally, like 1 through 100. And also there's like online tournaments with the whole nation every single week, multiple times a week. You know exactly where you stand. Like, there's no
Yeah,
mystery anymore.
exactly.
There's no East versus West. There's no Florida versus Texas. There's no regional rivalries, not because like the hype or anything is gone, but I just think the barriers have been broken down so much where it's like there's very little to discover in that sense, and you have to just be completely self-motivated to get through any plateaus, because you will get ego checked so quick. Like, yeah, you are here on the totem pole and there's no mistaking it. Back then you could be like, I think I'm the best in the world, I don't know, even though you've only played the handful of people in your state. You could at least have that fantasy. So you were breaking that world for them.
I do miss the rivalries between kind of like that state stuff like that. It
Mm-hmm.
still happens here and there, but yeah, like you mentioned, it's not as common anymore because online tournaments are so popular now. Everyone can just play Punk or Do, let's say for Street Fighter 6. Almost every day they can play them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or run into them in bracket. I would say back in the day, like it was harder to get good because it's if you don't have the resources compared to now, then I guess that's the harder part, right? But if you had a really good flow chart, a really good gimmick back in the day, then you were pretty much kind of unstoppable at that time, right? That was the only hard part. While gimmicks now can be broken down within like a few minutes, because now
Right.
like a new DLC character comes out, Twitter's already on it, right? All the Twitter FGC people, optimal combo in the 1 hour frame one, everything like that. So it's definitely a interesting era. But I mean, I love it now because it's so much easier to learn fighting games. It's way faster compared
Right.
to back in the day where it took much longer to get good in fighting games.
So you think overall it's better? Because I feel like a real big reason why we see so many people complain, even though I think things are actually pretty good, that era of discovery, that period is shortened from years to minutes now. And coupled a little bit with like game design, where games I think are a little bit more streamlined and execution barriers make things a lot quicker. But on top of that, just we have the entire world all at once collaborating to solve fighting game problems where that didn't exist before. I think that's what a lot of people love, is figuring a game out, because I think most fighting games are actually just kind of bad. like
I mean, you're
competitively
not
is what I
wrong.
mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
I because imagine if a game like MVC2 dropped today, as it is today, that game would get torn to shreds so quick. If the entire planet was working on it, and you know how people would complain like, oh, you have to play X, Y, or Z meta. Like, I think people would be super negative about it if Third Strike dropped today. How many people would be like, oh, Chun-Li's broken, this and that. I think people love that period of like figuring things out as you go. And the end goal, the end state, is not really what people love about most fighting games. It's the journey along the way, is a perspective I have. I don't know if you feel that way at all, and the difference in the eras.
I guess maybe for me, because I played at like arcades for my whole life and I had to spend money to learn how to play the character. I think the way I learn a game or a character is just faster than most. So I feel like me learning a game back in the day versus me learning the game now, the timeline is still pretty similar
Hmm.
in terms of I'll be able to figure out a flowchart on how to win in like the same time. Because anytime a new fighting game did come out into Chinatown Fair, I would still be one of the only people that would have like a large win streak because I already kind of like can guess on how do I make a character work, because it's just based off fundamentals, right? You might not know using the mechanics or anything like that, but you will always know how to anti-air, right? You always know like a fireball DP. You always know like, okay, this is how sweeps are always going to be broken during the time frame. Like, are sweeps good? Are throws good? Is your dash and how's your mobility? Or like how's your anti-airs? Like, those are the things that I always kind of like use when I learn a new fighting game. Are all these five things good? If they're not, then replace it with like a different button, or like what's my far range button, or what's a good abusable button? Do I have any light strings or anything like that? So I kind of run the same flowchart even from back in the day to now, and it still gives me kind of like similar results. Obviously, it's easier now because I'm not known to have optimal combos. Now I can do optimal combos if I see something on Twitter, but it's very easy for me to make up my own combos that can really get me still, I would say, the win at the end of the day.
Do you feel that as the meta evolves, though, like when I look at you, I mean, I went to Liquipedia to crunch the numbers a little bit. Just on Liquipedia, which I'm sure is completely missing probably 75% of your history of fighting games, just based on, you know, how long you've been doing it. You've had first place major wins and at least 19 titles from Liquipedia alone. And I don't think they tracked anything pre 2008, really.
Yeah, I don't think they tracked pre 2008 as
so
well. So
there's close to like a decade of results missing there. And you're someone I like you mentioned there. You're always on the forefront of any fighting game release. It doesn't matter which game you pick. It's Mortal Kombat, Killer Instinct, whatever it is. If a new game releases, you are a likely candidate to be winning early tournaments in that game. As the metas develop over time, did you feel yourself being squeezed or pushed to a certain direction to hyper optimize in one game and kind of abandon others? And what was the difference in that competitive meta between farming estates, showing up, beating them in 20 different games, versus suddenly, like, did you feel like you had to start focusing on individual titles more to maintain that level of success?
I think for focusing on individual titles became more popular because obviously you have other players that played multiple fighting games as well too, only focus on one, right? My prime example would be like Tokido, and he would only focus on only Street Fighter 5 or then only Street Fighter 6. I would say for me it was definitely pressured based off the sponsor. They're the ones that were like, okay, you should only play Street Fighter 5, or you should only play whatever main game that we sign you for. So that kind of sucked because that was the period where I only had to play Street Fighter 5. And I enjoy playing Street Fighter 5, but I just couldn't stand the online. That's just the one thing. I just couldn't stand it. It was driving me insane. And but traveling to all the tournaments to play in Street Fighter 5 and getting these points because of the Capcom Cup, all that type of stuff, it was still really fun, but I felt like it wasn't me anymore. I would say during that time because I love playing every fighting game, and I get kind of, I would say, bored if I only just play one fighting game at a time. But I did feel like I had a good amount of success in Street Fighter 5 just because like I did really well getting points. I always qualified for Capcom Cup when I like only focused on Street Fighter 5, and I would say even the non CPT tournaments, I would be able to travel to them and win most of them. There was a period, I mean, I was farming a lot of the Wizard World Street Fighter 5 tournaments. They had a really
That's
good
right.
payout. I think it was like $2,000 for first place. Like, they pay out extremely well. And there was just a lot of tournaments that had Street Fighter 5 as like their main title, and they had like really good payouts for it. So besides that, I think what's really helped me with Street Fighter 5 as well too, the blessing, was that a lot of the international tournaments, they wanted to fly me out to their country and play like with their locals, and and it was a points thing, right? So I don't think I ever said no. I always went to every Street Fighter 5 like tournaments when I got invited, because it's like free flight, hotel, I check out the country, and I play in a tournament. And most of the time I would say I won every international tournament that I went to. I think the only one I didn't win was when I went to Spain. I think I got like second or third or something. But when I went to South America, I think I won every like South America CPT tournament when I was invited, and I even won the Manila Cup one when I got invited to that one as well too. So even though I was only focusing on one game at the time, I feel like everyone else was also pressured to only play Street Fighter 5, right? Because all the sponsors only cared about Capcom Cup. So I guess after I left Evo Geniuses and I joined Echo Fox, where there was a little bit more freedom and I could play other games again, that's kind of where I was like, okay, I'm more back in my happy state. Just because just playing one game was brutal. Just because it's like, I don't know. I guess I get kind of bored just waiting there. Because the flow chart of playing only Street Fighter 5 was you show up to your pools. Let's say you got 10 a.m. pools. You finish at 12. Even earlier, if you stay in winners the whole entire time. Your day is done until Saturday.
Yeah.
I hated that. I was so bored. I just went back to my hotel room. It was so boring during that time frame. I completely hated it. So yeah, I would say I think that's kind of what made me stop becoming a one-man game specialist type of guy.
That's interesting because I've always just played one game in tournament. I've always just played Street Fighter. So when I look at someone like like you, maybe like a Pierre Rog, a Chris G, whatever, like some of you guys who are known for playing a lot of games, I'm like, what the hell? like, how are you doing this? I feel like I would be so exhausted. Because you're waiting in one bracket. Sometimes you have to tell the bracket runner for the other guy, hey, sorry, they're playing in this tournament right now. Hold that match for a few minutes while they play that, and you're switching gears between games. You didn't find that more exhausting? You preferred that to having more of a open day?
Yeah. I prefer just constantly playing and playing. I guess because it's what I've been doing since 2001. So it's kind of like I'm used to that. I think it's also because if I'm not doing anything, then I'll get hungry, and I'm like, what do I do? Just go get food by myself or something like that? Because everyone else pools are just different and everything.
Right.
I kind of just don't want to just sit there and stand around. Or if I'm watching another tournament, and I see the top 8, and I'm just like, damn, I would have won this tournament if I had participated. A lot of times I have like that thought in my head because I'm like, okay, this person's gonna do this, and then I would respond with this, and it kind of usually happens the way I guess foretelled in my head. So it makes me a little bit salty. So that's why I kind of like enjoy playing the multi fighting games, just because one, I've been doing it forever, and two, it's just like I just love just playing in general. Like
Right.
if I can't play, then I'm just like, why am I here, or what am I doing? Because I just can't stand waiting. I hate waiting. Even though I wait in game, I hate waiting in real life. It just drives me insane.
I feel like that's the mark of a good fighting game player. I feel like that's the main motivating factor. I hate waiting in games too. That's why I can never play like a MOBA or League of Legends, whatever. Just get me in the game and let me start playing right away. And it sounds like your main motivating factor though is you just didn't want anyone to think they were nice. Oh, you won that tournament? You think you're nice? If I was allowed to enter, if these sponsors took off the shackles on me, I would have won that tournament free.
It's possible. I mean, there's times I did think like, I could have beaten the first place guy for sure. A lot of times I thought about that when I was only playing Street Fighter 5. But I think I don't think I'm the only person that thinks about stuff like that. I think a lot of other multi fighting game players. Right, that's normal.
If I watch any random tournament, even if it's not true, even if I'm watching Punk play, and I'm like, man, I would have won. I think if you're a competitor, you have a little bit of that in you, a little bit when you're like, oh, I'm gonna sit this tournament out, and then you watch it, and you still feel like low key, like, oh man, I could have beat these guys. Like, that's just being a competitor. So I can imagine you being in every game all the time, and then stopping that. You're surrounded by that feeling. So I can see how that can be a constant source of struggle for you.
It definitely is, but like I said, once I left the sponsorship with the teams, I was able to play a lot more, so that made me a bit more motivated to play even more.
I see. But even to take it back a little bit, to get into that era, you started talking about Street Fighter 4 a little bit when things started changing. Before that occurred, though, we have to touch upon it. I know they've been talked to death a million times. There's two big moments from your career that happened in that pre-09 era, before everything blew up. Of course, there's Evo Moment 37, and then there's the Justin Wong comeback in MVC2 in 2007. Now, we don't have to go into too much detail about them. I feel like you've talked about this a billion times. But, of course, Evo Moment 37, probably the most historic comeback of all time in esports, period.
Yeah.
When did you know that moment was going to become something, or it was going to become a moment? Because from my understanding of the timeline, it wasn't really till like post 2009 that started to pick up steam retroactively and become something that the greater gaming community took note of. So what did you notice about the explosion of that, or how was the time frame when that started to come back and people would be like, hey, you're that guy from Evo Moment 37?
So Evo Moment 37, I mean, you're right. It didn't officially pop off until after the 2009, during pretty much the streaming and YouTube era. During the 2004 to up to 2009, nobody at tournaments would come up to me and be like, yo, how'd you feel about Evo Moment 37? Nobody. There was no like interview or anything about like, what are your thoughts about it until afterwards. So it really became more of a popular thing way down on the line. But the one thing that Evo Moment 37 did help with the FGC during that time frame was that it brought back it brought life back in Third Strike in the world, because Third Strike was also kind of like a dying game outside of Japan. Nobody really liked Third Strike, or everybody was kind of like giving up on playing Third Strike. But once Moment 37 happened, it actually replaced Marvel 2, because Marvel 2 would be the closeout of every Evo. But then it became Third Strike closing out every Evo after 2004. So I would say for that, it helped the scene just becoming more of a Third Strike, I would say, centered community, where now we have two main games that people play, Marvel 2 and Third Strike, right? But then afterwards, Moment 37 really became, it just really became streamlined. I don't even know when or which event it happened, but it was maybe it was like one of those like old Live on 3 streams that like Slasher and DJ Weed and Sir Scoots did, where they started bringing on how, you know, the FGC is going to be the new thing, where Street Fighter 4 is going to pop off. And I think that's when they started doing more research and talking about like, yo, like Evil Moment 37 was this like crazy thing that nobody really knows. And then I guess after that, people started knowing about it. But I would say the Yipes comeback, it's not as influential compared to Evil Moment 37. I think only people within the FGC talks about it, but they don't really talk about it how like casual people talk about it, you know?
Right.
Because now even to this day, people would be like, yo, Justin Wong, yo, I love that comeback that you did against the Chun-Li player. Sometimes people think I'm the Ken. So it's like, I mean, they know,
let's go Justin, you know, right? It kind of makes sense.
Yeah, they know it exists,
right?
But they don't know like the lore between it, right? And I don't think the me versus Yipes, like, it was a really great comeback. But when you compare the two comebacks, I would say the Marvel 2 one is definitely harder, but it's too long. You know, it's like a 2-minute video or whatever. While Evil Moment 37 was like the perfect length for the casual human brain to not be like, all right, I'm tired of watching this, right?
Right.
So it really is the perfect comeback.
I would say those two, though, were still very influential even back when I was joining the community, because maybe the Marvel comeback was a little bit too long, but I think what sticks out is Justin Wong. I mean,
the commentator, Lawrence.
Yes, Lawrence, thank you. I know you and Yipes recently had the video posted with the Evo squad reviewing that moment. I didn't know the commentator's name, but that sound bite, I think, just sticks in people's minds. It stuck in my mind from the time I heard it. And the interesting thing about those two moments is, you know, you didn't win any of those tournaments, right? Like,
I did not.
The Yipes ended up winning that Evo, and you only got 2 games on him. I was checking the numbers. So that was winners finals. He beat you 2-1, and then he beat you 3-1 in grand finals.
Yeah.
And then neither you nor Daigo won that Evo for Third Strike. KO won that kind of free over all of you, and that was losers finals. And so looking back at it, the winner of these tournaments it didn't survive history. And so it kind of brings into question, like, what is greater? Is it the moment, that's literally in the name, or like the championship? And for you, you've won so many Evos over the years, especially during this era, the pre-2009 era. What do you think about that? Like, when you think about legacy, or like what has the most impact, is it these moments or the championship? And what do you value more looking back?
Oh man, it's tough just because I do think the moments overshine the winners of the tournament. Like there was an Evo FGC interview I think they did a few months back where they asked the question of who won Third Strike in 2004. And
Mm,
literally most people did say Daigo.
yep.
Most people did say Daigo, right? And it's just like damn, like a lot of people are just so focused on the viral moment. And but there, I would say it really comes down to the commentators giving an amazing storyline, the first place champion can override the moment, because then the champion becomes the moment itself. Like I think the perfect example is like Arslan Ash winning Tekken, right? Because that's like a crazy champion win and all crazy moment because he's this guy from Pakistan who had the most biggest struggle to try to get a visa to compete and everything, right? So the commentator is consistently telling this story, and I guess that becomes a moment itself because when you think about 2007, me and Yipes, right? Yipes won Evo. I did not win, but people talk about that. There was no commentators like that. There was just like sound bites here and there, right? But there was no official like broadcast team that's like, hey, we're gonna commentate this tournament or whatever, right? 2004, same thing with Seth Killian. My man, he had the big camcorder. He just really just talking like here and there, but there was no like top eight storyline the whole entire time. It's not like he
Mm.
recorded the whole top eight and was like, KO from Japan is like the best in the world and nobody has ever beaten him or anything like that. That all that storyline is like not said during that time frame. While now I think you don't really get that many moments anymore, but the commentators just do such a great job at bringing that. So it's really hard for a moment to kind of like override the champion. I would say now the only time I could think about if when a moment was greater than the champion was meme moments. For example, Woshige
Yeah.
standing up in Guilty Gear, right? I don't even know who won the tournament. Actually, I don't even know who won the tournament, but I
Me
remember
neither.
Woshige standing up, and the what are you standing up for really smoked him that tournament, and that was really funny. For me, that was really funny. But for 2015. I know KBR won Marvel 3 just because I feel like his story of coming from Chile, him grinding all these tournaments and him fighting F Champ at Winter Brawl and just getting disrespected,
Oh yeah.
that was already a big storyline that becomes a moment itself, right? So I think like it's really up to the broadcast team to really push those stories onto the champions.
That's true. I think we're all getting older in the FGC, and I think we've come to realize how important it is to tell these stories as they're happening and retroactively capture them, because so much of this has been left to like the footage graveyards, or all these stories have been left behind. Because stuff like that pains me too. When they ask the audience who won that Evo, nobody knows.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Yeah, now as I'm getting older, I'm seeing it in real time for my era, and I'm like, oh god, I gotta step in and do something about this. The kids need to know what went down here. But I still feel like moments still occur. I mean, Blad's getting second place at Capcom Cup. That's probably going to outlive Kakadu getting first. You know what I mean? I feel like we're still seeing that to this day.
That's tough because I feel like Kakaru winning is like, I don't know. I think that was really cool that he won. But yeah, I do think Blad's storyline was really, really that important. But I mean, if you look at the previous Capcom Cup, I mean, everyone still remembers Uma winning, right? Well, like what was the storyline besides that besides Uma winning from last year?
Exactly. I don't want to get into.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into last year. I don't.
Everyone knows Uma won.
Yeah, but that's. I think the storyline is what was the storyline.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there wasn't really a storyline. Everyone just got bodied.
Yeah,
in the death pool.
I think that's the problem. Sometimes our stories don't come together. I mean, I hate to sound like I'm ragging on Uma every time it comes up. I tend to have a negative tone with that one, but I feel like the big takeaway was a big question mark. like what? And then it was over. So
yeah,
we still have some ironing out to do to highlight our players, because it would have been much better, in my opinion, if we knew about Uma ahead of time, right? If we could have done something better with the format to make it so that it wasn't an unknown player to the casual audience completely winning, because Uma was not unknown due to any lack of effort. He was going to tournaments and entering and trying. The format just didn't give him any exposure.
I guess that makes sense because he qualified off points, and only time I know of Uma is because of the online tournament that ICFC did, that
Right.
Tenno Media they did. Right, that's the only time I know about Uma, and I just see F Champ destroying Uma every week. That was literally my known knowledge of Uma. Is like I just see F Champ just smoking this jury player,
Right.
and I'm just so when I'm seeing him winning Capcom Cup, I'm like, wow. That's crazy. Everybody just has a great day. That's what it comes down to.
F Champ said they're like, just like you all those other tournaments, I could have won $1 million.
Yeah, I could have won $1 million. I beat this guy every week. That's probably what he would say.
Exactly, yeah. Well, like I said, we still have some to iron out to make sure these moments are preserved. But you did have a big moment going from the pre 2009 to 2009 era. You already mentioned it a little bit ahead of this, so I'm gonna go ahead and do something interesting here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna play a clip for you, Justin, and then I want you to describe for the audio listeners at home what's going on in this clip. So I'm gonna share my screen here. So this is 2009 going to 2010. Things were changing in the FGC. So can you describe what's going on in this clip, Justin?
I got into a car. And don't look at the way I put on the seatbelt, but just know that my windows are tinted, so it's completely black. So I'm driving a car completely blind, sort of, not really blind, but there's at least a 6-frame delay from the camera that they have installed on the top of the hood, and I crashed the whole set. But just know that I don't have a driver license, and they actually made me drive a car without a driver license, right? That's all I'm gonna say. And just know this, Brian, I did not get last place on this challenge. I actually got second to last. So, you gotta take that into account. That I wasn't the worst driver. I was not a worst driver. The person that got last was I believe Vanessa, and she lives in California. So that means she has to learn how to drive. So I beat a seasoned driver in a driving challenge. So with a 6-frame delay on the camera.
I see you have the OSs ready after a decade plus here, because I didn't know you had to drive in the reaction to the camera delay. I can,
it's
as a gamer, I understand now. I understand.
Yeah.
So this was the game show, I'm assuming, that your parents saw, that exposed the fact that you were a semi-professional gamer on the weekends for years leading up to this point, and also the game show that you were disconnected from the world when you were going to become not a semi-pro but an actual sponsored professional player.
Yep, you are correct. This is the same show.
Wow. So how did this show end up? Did you end up winning the whole thing, or what was the actual conclusion?
No, I actually got 5th place on that show. And 5th place didn't get anything. We pretty much, it's either you get 1st place, which gives you the $100,000 win, or you're also paid like per day. So I was there for at least I think 28 days. So I got paid during that time, I think like $200-300 a day. It was really cool. I mean, I had a blast. It was just the only problem was I just lost in the dumbest way possible, right? So I got to the final 4, and it was me playing Forza. And the reason why I lost was we had to drive with our feet. We were put in straitjackets. So I'm in a straitjacket, and I have to use my left foot to steer the wheel, and my right foot to use the gas pedal and brake at the same time. So that was the challenge, and I got eliminated in that one, and I was just so pissed. I was just like, God damn it, I lost because I was in a straitjacket. It was a driving challenge.
Again, seems to be your weakness.
Again, dumbass driving challenge. But I don't think I would have won 1st place anyway, even if I got through that challenge, because the 1st place was you had to win 3 games. It was Blah's Blue, which I would have won.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was Rock Band, which I think I would have won that because I'm good at rhythm games. But then the 3rd game was Halo, right? Because the new Halo game is coming out. So if you tied, because it's 1 point, 1 point, and Halo's 2 points. If you tie, then you do a sudden death match in Halo again. So I wasn't gonna win against, I would say, the person that won, Cat Gun, because she is a professional FPS player during that time, during that era. I don't think I would have won regardless, because I would have won BlazBlue, potentially won Rock Band, but would have lost the Halo both times, right? So
Right.
yeah, ultimately it kind of sucks that I lost though. I was sad, but it was a really good experience. I never was done all these challenges before, and I was on TV, right? I was on TV, so that was really cool.
Right. And your life really changed after that, because suddenly, you're coming clean to your parents about your history of being a competitive fighting game player, and now you're getting the call to become the second officially professional American fighting game player, signing with Evil Geniuses, which kickstarts off the era of like EG Justin Wong and the EG Fighting Game Squad, which I think is super iconic to many people from that era. Of all the top level EG players, like if you're on EG, that was like the pinnacle. There was nothing.
The one?
There was nothing greater, no greater achievement you could have in that esports sense at that time in the FGC. So, what was the difference between the pre-EG era and post-EG era? And can you describe like how your life changed from that moment? Because I'm assuming now you went from working part-time or maybe full-time at your Circuit City and Dave and Buster's and doing the random tournaments. Did you go immediately then at that point to full-time gaming with a salary, going to tournaments? What was that transition like, and how did things change?
I guess I didn't really go full-time yet, because I think during that time frame, sponsorship was still kind of like, the money was pretty low, right? It's a new thing, and we don't know how much we were worth back in the day. And I was only getting, as my first year player contract, I only got like 1,000 a month. So I didn't know if that was like reasonable, if that was good or whatever. Thinking about it now, I guess I could have probably argued for like maybe 2,000 as a start from that time frame, 2010. But in my head, I was like, wait, they're trying to pay me 1,000 a month, and they pay for flight and hotel to every tournament I go to. Yeah, I mean, that was a no brainer at the time, because I literally didn't have to pay out of my pocket to go to these tournaments anymore, right? And I got a free hotel. I didn't have to split a room with like 50 other people. So to me, that was like instantly yes, because I would say I was working at the Family Fun Arcade in California. This is when I moved to California. So I worked at Family Fun Arcade as like the token guy. So I would say gradually I quit once I like was able to go to so many tournaments, because this is when more tournaments started becoming a thing, and they started having majors everywhere. They had like those Evo points where you get like first place seed, because at that time it was still like important to win Evos, right? It still is important to win Evos, but there was no tours yet, right? It was just Evo and a bunch of other tournaments like ESWC, trying to like put in big prize pools for Street Fighter 4. And I went to all those tournaments, and that kind of where it changed a lot, where I was like, okay, I'm gonna travel as much as I can, and it's just free traveling. So that it was instantly a profit for me, just because it's like, even though 1,000 month doesn't sound high, it's not as a salary, but if you had the power to like win every tournament and travel for free, then that's where the big profit really comes in, because they didn't take a cut. Because I know some other contracts, player contracts, they take like 15%, 20%. They were like, yeah, we won't take a cut from you like at all. So I kept all the prize money in there. And it's all cash too, right? So it just makes it even easier. So it was like, yeah, such a huge win. I would say the second year, I think that's when they offered me like 3,000, and that's kind of where it started to be like, oh shit, 3,000, what a come up, right? And I go to travel all these tournaments as well too, and there was no restriction of like you only focus on one game. So I still played like every game, and I still was winning like majority of the tournaments, or at least getting second. And yeah, I felt like I was cashing out huge during that era, where just travel around all over America, sometimes around different countries, and experiencing all this type of stuff. Like, I was doing really good for myself.
Right. It seems like that was kind of the peak balance between the esports era and the farming era, right? Because I just don't think that exists anymore, really. Like the ability to farm so many tournaments. It's just like especially the big ones, it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like the only people who are able to win the big ones, first of all, it's so competitive and you're competing with the international audience. It's like it's 30 players that are fighting for first place, really. So your odds are really bad to win the big ones for the prize pool. And then you're putting all your energy into that. But that era was like the sweet spot. You're starting to get the contract, starting to get a salary position, and you can still now farm, but it's all profit because you got rid of the big expense, which was travel, the flight, the hotel, and everything. So it's all gravy at that point. And that was a really interesting time for me. That's when I joined the scene. I could see you and other people every weekend, every other tournament doing that. At the same time, there was all the people who weren't sponsored doing the same thing, which was always a mystery to me. I was like, this
how they do it?
Yeah. This was when the concept of a professional player was really fuzzy, which it still is today. It's something that I talk about a lot. People call anyone who shows up on stream a couple times a year like a pro
player. Yeah.
Right. So
I see it too. I get it.
Right. And so back then I thought that too, and then, until eventually the illusion was destroyed when I started going to tournaments, and I'm like, what do these guys do? How are they alive? Like there's no money anywhere. How are they surviving like this?
People were like, hey man, like how can I get a sponsorship? Like I wish I could get a sponsorship. Like I'm 1800 MR, 2000 MR. Like how can I get people to notice me? Right? I'm like, well, you have to invest in yourself, right? And they're like, what if I'm broke? What if I don't have money? Then go get a job and do that. Because I tell them like, I used to spend my own money to go to these tournaments. So I tell people you need to invest in yourself as well too. Go to a tournament, pull upset, get experience. Like it's not just like you're good at online and make 2000 MR every time the points reset and be like, hey, I deserve a sponsorship, right?
Yeah, and don't you think the model has changed entirely? And this was a big topic I wanted to get into with you. The concept of being a pro versus being like a content creator or influencer, and how those lines are very blurred right now. And what is even worth it? Because what does it even mean to be a pro player? I think is a very ambiguous designation. And there's a handful of people on the planet I could look to be like, that's a pro player, right? You look at like a Tokido. I think Tokido is the prototypical to me pro player. Yeah. Like if you want the gold standard, you look at Tokido. And then even I look at Punk, and I'm like, Punk's a pro player to me, but also he's really a content creator, streamer personality as well. Like a big part of what he does to me is being content creation. And there's also eras where it feels like he's more focused on streaming versus competing. And then he gets back into competitive mode and wins Evo when he wants to, right? So I think that's very ambiguous these days. And what is even like worth pursuing? And like if I was that Dalsum player, if I were talking to them, I would say like just start doing YouTube and streaming and make money, make buzz organically online, and get your name out there. And just if you're good enough online right now, you'll get into Capcom Cup. Like if you're actually that good, there's no barrier to entry. So
yeah, for sure.
What do you need to be sponsored for? First of all, there's even that question. What is the point?
The easiest way to get sponsored now, it currently is if you qualify for EWC, right? That's kind of like what last year showed us, was if you qualify for EWC, your DMs will instantly start hitting. Like once this is funny because it was so fast. Lex last year, he got third at Evo Japan, right? Qualified for EWC, amazing placement at Evo Japan. We went to have dinner the same day, right? And I told him like, yeah, you're probably gonna get a DM like pretty soon, just because of how big EWC seems like it's gonna be with its team championships. Literally, once I said that during dinner, he had like 5 DMs. Hey, congratulations, Evo Japan. We would like to talk to you about joining our team and blah blah blah.
Right.
So it literally happened the same timing as he qualified, right? So I would say I would expect similar situations to happen for this year for EWC. So I guess the craziest part for me is that these teams don't care about Capcom Cup. They only cared about EWC because we noticed last year a lot of players got dropped right after EWC finished, even though they qualified for Capcom Cup. And I guess that's kind of what makes it hard, as like what makes a professional fighting game player, because these are short as contracts. I think Broski also talked about how he got offered a sponsorship and it was like very short, and instead of like investing 2-3 years, it was like kind of like a 6-month thing, and he just turned it down. And I mean, I guess this is quick big money for a lot of people to just get it, but it just kind of hurts like your future in terms of like you should fight for longevity. And you're right, you should start doing YouTube. You should start doing streaming. You have to be a multitasker, and that's also what I learned as well. Is like I can't just only be a professional fighting game player. I think what really made me change my attitude was the pandemic, COVID, because during that time frame I was still only focusing on tournaments. I didn't really focus on YouTube that much. I did like YouTube videos here and there, but not serious. But during the pandemic I realized, all right, everything is canceled. There's no more tournaments. Online sucks. There was no rollback for lots of the big games yet, or if it was, Street Fighter 5 didn't do a great job of rollback. um I had to see what can I do? How can I change it up, right? So I
Right.
think that's when I really put all my eggs in the basket, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna just focus on just upping my social media game up, doing YouTube, streaming a lot more on Twitch because there's nothing else to really do. You can't really travel, right? And it really was the biggest payout I ever had in history was literally just putting my eggs in the basket and just making a big YouTube channel. And like it
Mm.
really was like the best thing that ever happened, I would say, in my life.
Interesting. I do think COVID was a huge wake up call to pretty much everybody in the FGC, myself included. Right. That's also you were leading the forefront there. I went really hard on content creation at the time. Punk. A lot of the people in the FGC made that pivot because you were kind of forced to. But I think there might have been a bigger payout you had before that. Hold on, I got another thing I want to share with you. Give me a.
I don't think so, to be honest.
Let's see. Well, let me jog your memory real quick. 1 second here. Can you describe to the people what we're looking at here, Justin?
The Bud Light.
I thought this might have been a pretty good payout. I don't know.
It was a really good payout. What was it? It was like $25,000, I believe.
Oh,
it was a $25,000 like sponsorship for like 1 year. So that was really cool. Yeah, $25,000 sponsorship for 1 year. But no, we didn't really have to do anything. It was just like you're giving them the rights to put you on their website or whatever, right? I would say, but I felt like I worked pretty hard on that, like in terms of just marketing and pushing the numbers and everything like that to make sure I get voted in as like the FGC person for Bud Light All Stars. But yeah, I would say that's not. I mean, okay, 25,000. It's a lot of money for sure, right?
I'd put on a Bud Light hat for
yeah,
for 25K.
But I think compared to now, it's like I make a lot more money based off just content creation.
Right.
But
I guess I brought that up because that's my favorite Justin Wong meme of all time. I have a real soft spot for that photo. But also how you were even then that was 2017, right? You were in the influencer game even back then, pre-COVID. Like you had started to dabble in this world, and that's still when you're heavy competing. I mean, you got like 5th place at Capcom Cup 2018, and you're on Echo Fox, which this is like the Gilded Era is what I describe it as. That 2017 to 2019 era of especially Street Fighter 5, and especially when Echo Fox was active, eSports the bubble was as big as it ever got. That was right before it burst. People were getting insane contracts.
It was crazy. It was crazy because I remember that same exact day. Okay, I was in the Philippines. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go on a vacation, and this is where I was like, all right, I'm gonna leave Evil Geniuses and I'm going to do solo and do my own thing, right? Get my own sponsors and everything like that, which I did in 2019. But 2017, I was already thinking about stuff like that, right? And I literally get a DM from Echo Fox, and they're like, "Hey, we want to sign you, and we will give you 12,000 a month." And I said, "All right, I'm joining Echo Fox," just straight up.
Right.
And so I did that for 2 years, and obviously, I was able to do a lot more with Echo Fox and get a lot more brand deals like Bud Light and everything. So it was really definitely a crazy year before the esports FGC bubble popped, where they're like, "Yo, we're paying people too much." But that was pretty much where I would say Aquafox kind of started the trend of just like paying people way too much, and every other team had to follow suit because all the other players were like they were realizing how much players were getting paid. But then I think it normalized. Like now it's like very normalized, very averaged out.
Right. Yeah, I just remember looking back to that era and just being like, what was going on? But everything post that time shrunk, and then COVID accelerated it. But you could even see post 2017, the scale of things was starting to shrink. Even Capcom Cup, right? Because 2017 when Mena won was at the PlayStation Experience, that convention center, biggest stage I'd seen Capcom Cup ever, right? And then 2018 when you had your top 8 run was just at the Luxor, like the eSports arena,
eSports arena,
the tiny ass arena, and I was like, this is just not the same. Like, and then 2019 and beyond was in LA and like random clubs, and I just wasn't quite there, and the esports org started pulling out, and then COVID accelerated that. So the writing was on the wall that, you know, everything had kind of downscaled at that time.
but I would say that in the whole me becoming some like already I was in the influencer market, it was because of the teams. Because if you have a really good esports team, then you would have to do sponsor activations, like do a beta pro at like a PAX or TwitchCon or something like that, right? So if you have a good team to put you on for stuff like that, it really already puts you in that market, because you're going to meet people that doesn't go to your major tournaments, that doesn't go to
Right.
Evo and everything like that. And that's kind of how I guess I got into it, because Evo Genius would send me to PAX to do like beta pro for like a HyperX for like many of years. But then that's where I met people from like Logitech. I met people from like Razer, like, and then I worked with them in the future. It was because of those opportunities of me being blessed on joining a really good team and giving me those opportunities to go to these trade show events where I met all these people at like those Twitch parties, right? We're like, hey, I work for this company. I know who you are. I'm a big fan. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I never seen you at an FGC tournament,
Right.
but you know, like, right? If you're a big fan, like I never seen that big FGC tournament. But I mean, if you know who I am and you know about the scene, then sure, maybe we could do something, right? And
Right.
that's kind of how it all turned out for me in 2019, where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get my own sponsors and see how I can make this work.
Right. And it's interesting to see that, because you were just describing how the Street Fighter V era, like the tour era, I would also say, right? Like focusing on one game, as things got bigger and bigger, more global, and the competition kept increasing, you had to zoom in on one game that kind of burned you out, where like what your actual passion is to play in many different games. Really, what we're seeing now is that you're able to capitalize on this like 2 decades of expertise you built across the genre, and now you can cash in on that to a degree. But like, hey, I'm the guy who won a million fighting games. If any new fighting game comes out, like I will have a valuable perspective on it because I've established this expertise over years. So it really, I feel like, worked out greatly in your favor to be able to get back to those roots to a degree via content creation in that sense. So when it came like post COVID, and even now with like Street Fighter 6 coming out this time, where you like really solidified yourself as, I'm going to focus more on exploring fighting games as a whole, as a genre, and more of the content creator influencer space? Or was there a part of you that was like, oh, maybe I'll lock in for Street Fighter 6 and buckle down? What was your mindset going into this new era we're in?
I think COVID really killed I would say my aspirations of just becoming the best. Just because it's like literally the whole 2 to 3 years, it was like me turning on the stream and then turning that stream into like a YouTube VOD. But like the content was like me playing all these old games, or me playing these old games I never played before, and seeing how people thoroughly enjoyed watching it. But also I also enjoyed the stupid brokenness non-QA tested games as well too. And it really showed how much I love fighting games, right? And and this is not even just a competitive level, it's just like a casual level, because I'm playing these games where there's no online multiplayer. It's just me playing against the computer, me going through what the game has to offer me in arcade mode or story mode or whatever, and I'm just thoroughly enjoying it. Even to this day, anytime I never played a fighting game, I'm excited to just see how I can break it down. What's the ending of it, or can I learn something from it? I feel like, I guess maybe it's because I'm comfortable and stable, where I don't really have to think about playing competitively. Because I can go to like a tournament and be like, "Hey, hit up the tournament organizer. Hey, can I get a booth? I'll come to your tournament and everything. Like, we'll commentate your tournament." And I would make more money having a booth, just creating content, versus winning the actual tournament itself. So I feel like the stress is like, I guess it's not stressful, and I guess I'm just really complacent That's what it comes down to. And I know a lot of people would say like, "Hey, I'm gonna come back and play professionally or whatever," and a lot of times they don't. I don't want to say I'm going to or I want to lock in to play competitively. It's more of just like I'm in such a very comfortable spot where I know what works and what's getting the bills done, what's going to the savings for my daughter. And I think that also plays a factor where it's like if I go to a tournament and I like suck ass, where I don't even like win anything, I would feel very bad just coming home where like, damn, I wasted the whole weekend and I didn't get anything done and it didn't really help Harper out. So I guess that's kind of where I also come from because I kind of I'm not I would say I'm not the biggest risk taker in game, but also in real life. So I try to play everything super safe.
It's so interesting you say that. I see that. I definitely see that perspective in what you just described. Right, you're focusing on stability now at this point in your career, and you put in your 10 billion hours. Right, you've won all the tournaments almost. I mean, they've created new tournaments beyond since your prime. So maybe like an eSports World Cup or a Capcom Cup would be like the last remaining titles you can even get, which I guess is also unfortunate. I feel like the big money titles all came after you've won so many.
It came after,
right?
Yeah.
Like looking through Wikipedia, your winnings for winning so many titles are less than one Capcom Cup. I don't think it's obviously not counting your millions of small tournaments and other things, but of like the modern era tournaments, official Evos, because you won so many Evos, but the prize pools for those were so low, and now one Capcom Cup is like so $1 million, right? It's like just you were in your prime in a different era. But it's funny you say that you weren't taking risk in real life, because like the one common theme when doing all these discussions with people who've had a great success in this area, they've all dedicated their lives from a very young age. And I mean, I guess to be fair to you, you had the most balance. You had a day job while doing all this. You did split your attention.
I listened to your episode with Punk, and you know how Punk told you how he quit his quit his school to play fighting games. I was like, I couldn't do that. Like and that's not to say like that's bad on Punk. It was just more of like he felt that he could do it without going to school and like everything was going to work out. For me, it's also a different era, a different time frame where there was no way it would have worked if I would just like drop out of school and didn't have a part-time job. There was like, how would I get to the tournament in the first place, right? So like, because at least for him, was automatically pretty much sponsored by Panda pretty early on, right? And then streaming was also a factor where his streams were really like popular even before it got to this point where he's doing really good for himself. So he had a good amount of resources for him to make a decision to quit school. I would say for me, there was not enough resources for me to even have that consideration in my mind to take that risk.
No, it didn't exist. And like he was competing when he did that. That was 2017. There's $250,000 for first, right? There's sponsorships. Like there was esports was proven to exist at that time, so it was completely different eras. And like, I imagine like if you had just were born a decade later, you would have maybe taken a similar path.
I could see that. I could see that for sure.
It just didn't exist. So you did play it a little bit more lame, I guess, a little bit more lame and safe in your approach, even in real life, to achieve greatness in your own era. But I wonder, like, how do you reconcile that with your inner competitor? Because your last Evo win, Evo 2014, I imagine that's a big one, because that's the one that you got post 2009, right? You're winning so many all these MVC2 Evo titles with a handful broken up in between, with people trying to break your streaks, make sure you don't win 10 in a row pretty much. And then the 2009 era, Street Fighter 4 comes out, you get second to Daigo, and you get close in a couple other games, but there's a clear difference, I think, in the eras, right? The post 2009 Evo, maybe you can expand upon it if you don't feel the same. I feel they're completely different in terms of scale and comparison. And then to 2014, you finally get one.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely different in terms of number wise and scale, but I felt like it was still kind of similar to like before pre 2009. I think things got a lot harder. I think after 2016, personally.
Okay.
So I think before 2016, it was still pretty pretty consistent how my results were. Like I won Marvel 2 in 2010. That was like the last Marvel 2. Then I think me and Issei won a 2v2 Third Strike, which was like they had an official Third Strike 2v2. They tried that format. So we won that one as well too. And I got second and third a lot of the other evos for other games like Killer Instinct and Cross Tekken as well. So I think the results were still pretty similar. But 2014 I would say was a huge win because that was where I didn't really play the meta. I just kind of played how I felt like playing, and it was also the first time I heard the crowd cheer for me because I'm used to people booing me because that's how it was back in the day. But people were just chanting my name and everything like that, and they wanted not a Virgil or Morgan or Zero team to win. So I think that really made me really happy. I would say for sure. But then I think it definitely got a lot harder after 2016 where I think that's when all the games started getting a lot more serious, a lot more competitor. That was also the tour era for all these games. Like every company want to have a tour, Tekken World Tour, Arx's World Tour, whatever World Tour. Like they were just mashing World Tours at that point, right? So competitions was a lot more steeper during that time. And I mean, the last time after that I did well was 2019. That was like for Sam Show. I got third at Evo. I was trying to win Sam Show hard because I was like a $30,000 prize pool. So I was really sad I got third that tournament. Um, but yeah, even now I think there was a 2016 error till 2019, but now it's like even harder. Like because now much more players are better at fighting games now because of because of post COVID. Everyone had no place to go to travel, so everyone's just grinding at home. So everyone just got a lot better of like how to understand fighting games. So literally, and it's not even just a huge gap anymore because before it was like Japan's the best, right? Now it's like everyone is like on a similar level or at least close to Japan. It's actually the closest that has ever been where in the global scale where all the countries are super close to each other in skill.
I see. Yeah, I forget about your Sam Show third place win because I guess I'm thinking about your career and like your choice to pursue stability in content creation. Like what point in your career were you like, I am satisfied with the number of Evo wins I have and I'm okay. Like once you hit that 2020 era and the world said, hey, this is probably the best chance for you to pivot to something else. Like how many Evo wins would it take? How did you know you were satisfied with your performance and the fact that you were okay with it?
Yeah, it was really during COVID because we were stuck at home for 3 years, and my drive for competitiveness is kind of just went away because then I have a new passion of like just upping the YouTube numbers. That was like my next passion. It's like, how do I keep getting bigger and bigger on YouTube? It's even my passion now. Just like, what can I do to get to a higher subscriber count or anything like that? Like, cause I look at like Maximilian, he's like the person that you want to chase, right? If you,
Okay.
in terms of like content creation. And I was like, I always tell people, I just want to be 15% successful as max. I don't want 100% because that's just not realistic. I'm always trying to be realistic with numbers. So I want to be like at least 15% of what he's doing. So definitely during the pandemic, it really changed my perspective. If there was no pandemic, I would say I would still probably be competing, playing in tournaments even to this day.
Interesting.
But because the pandemic domesticated me to stay home, it changed my whole perspective of like what I want to do now.
Okay. Interesting. That was another thing I was curious about because I'm always interested in perspectives on like the industry of esports and all that because I feel like especially like the North American scene, we've had a talent drain for forever where all of our best players eventually age out and they go, okay, it's not really necessarily my skills diminishing relatively, it's that I need to pay bills, like I'm getting older, I have responsibilities, I have a family starting, whatever, I got to get out of here. But when you look at Japan, like Daigo's 43, Tokido's 39, Sako's 45, and Abashi 43. You're 39 as well, right? That's what Wikipedia says.
39.
Right. You're in that age group, and all of them are active, professional, sponsored players still, and you're more in the content creation route. And I just wonder what your perspective is on that, on like how like the Japanese scene has kind of found more stability and these players are still playing versus NA, where how many top level pros are still competing? And is it just because of them falling off? I don't really think so. I think there's economic forces at play.
It really comes down to the culture. I'm always impressed and intrigued of like how all in Japanese like people are as like as their upbringing, because I think their whole saying is like once they want to do something, they really see it to the end. And I think that's what we see a lot versus compared to NA. NA is like kind of like, or maybe the rest of the world, but at least I could speak for NA, is when I see people wanting to do something, if it's not, I guess, given to them, they don't want to pursue it. Or like, it's kind of like they need kind of an option select to kind of like help them out to go for that. And that's the hard part. Because sometimes you have to put your own money, you have to put your own time to actually get those type of results while waiting for a possible DM or an email to be like, hey, we want to sponsor you for anything like that. While Japan, they're going to chase it. They're going to get people to see who they are, see them, and then they'll get that opportunity. They'll get that offer. And if you look at how before the whole, Street Fighter 6 blew up with the whole VTubers and everything like that, they were already doing so well with Street Fighter League, right? There was a thing where if you were really good in Street Fighter 5 or Street Fighter 6 on, and you're doing amazing stuff online, people will seek you out to join their team, right? To do like all this type of stuff. When I talk to a lot of like pro players, I would say like last year or 2 years ago, their main focus was playing Capcom games. They didn't want to play, I would say, a lot of other games anymore, because they know that if they do well, they might get picked up for Street Fighter League Japan, right? And which is, I would say, for them, it's like a real job for them.
Right.
And I think the prime example was when I talked to someone, it was like Goichi. He's like, yeah, no more Under Night, no more Dragon Ball, only Street Fighter, right? And Goichi, I mean, he's a god in so many of these, like, I would say Kusoge games, and he obviously won Evo for Dragon Ball, and now he's like chasing the Street Fighter dream as well too, right? So it's just Japan just has a lot. I feel like a lot more opportunities, and even when I talked to Momochi like years ago, he said the only reason why he's so successful now is because he moved from Nagoya all the way to Tokyo. If he didn't move to Tokyo, the success would not be there. But he made like that big move to be like, hey, like, I know I'm good enough. I can beat all these players, but I just need the experience and exposure where everyone is living in Tokyo. Daigo, Tokido, Fudo, all these guys live in Tokyo. I need to make the move and see what happens. And like, it's not like somebody paid him to move to Tokyo. He did it on his own accord because he felt like he could do it. And I think that's also like what I did as a kid, is like, I believe that if I go to this tournament, I'm going to win. And I just kept having results and results after results. And I think that's like the really big difference. A lot of people are just waiting to be signed, but they're not putting an effort to get signed.
Interesting. Well, speaking of opportunities, I do have one more thing to show you. Let's see if I can pull this up. Can you describe what you see here on the screen?
The Street Fighter League, the first season of Street Fighter League for Street Fighter 5. Yeah, it was me, yourself, Brian F, and Psycho, who also was a finalist for this year's Street Fighter League World.
Yeah, at least one of us is still cooking, right?
Yeah, at least one of us still cooking.
Psycho's doing work out there. Yeah, so it's funny. We were actually on the first U.S. Street Fighter League, where it was far away from what it is today. I would say. Yes. We weren't even getting paid at all. I think you might have been. I think the captains had some kind of appearance fee, but originally,
there was some drama between that, because the captains got paid, and then the other players didn't get paid. But I think after the first day, then they paid the other players, if I can recall correctly.
Yes, I think there were some arguments being had, and Rob was speaking up pretty loud. I mean, we were taking like 1 to 2 weeks, like at least 1.5, 2 weeks off work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like we were flying away from our jobs in real life as all amateur players. and for zero pay, which I think was probably just illegal. Like I don't.
It was pretty bad. Yeah,
I think there might have been some California labor laws that probably apply there to give us some kind of money. But it's interesting how far it's come. But you brought up like Street Fighter League Japan, right? So I feel like the opportunities compared to even today, where Street Fighter League USA I think was very underdeveloped back then, Street Fighter League Japan is just so far ahead. I mean, it's like an actual sport there in Japan.
Yeah, it is. It's like a job. Like if you're signed, you're super happy. You're like Lashar. I think he moved to Japan for a whole year to play in Tokido's team. So it's like super huge if you are selected as a Street Fighter League like player.
Yeah, to me personally, it feels like if you're going to be an actual pro player and your focus is being a pro player, I still feel like the only real place of opportunity is Japan right now. I feel like that more and more as time goes on.
Yeah, I believe you're right, because even recently while I was in Osaka with the family, after everyone's like tired, they're done for the day, they're going to sleep, I just jump online, just playing, like hitting up people. Hey, do you want to play me in this first to 10 set? I just want to post it on YouTube, blah, blah, blah. And they're down, right? So in my head, I was like, man, I wish I could just live in Japan for like a month, right? And then just like grind the content and everything like that. I even got hit up to go to like different offices from like SNK and Capcom to be, hey, like let's maybe do something, blah, blah, blah. So it's just like, it really is. I would say that's the land of opportunities if you're a fighting game player. Like you can get a lot of stuff done, even if you're like, I would say, not as famous or whatever. Like if you have an active YouTube channel or if you want to stream, like it's just so worth it, because all the rewards are there. You get better at fighting games. You get to see how fun it is to play fighting games in Japan. And I mean, you might be able to create some cool ass content, like, and it's all from your hotel room. The hotel room internet is so good. I was on Wi-Fi. I was on Wi-Fi in my hotel room, and I was playing online this past week in Osaka. So it's just like I wish I could stay there a longer, just to only focus on content and not explore Japan, but just literally like, okay, I want to play against all the best players in these games, go to the arcades play against these players, and just have a shit ton of recordings, or even do something where I collab with like other like Japanese fighting game players or Japanese fighting game streamers. Like all that type of stuff is like literally at your fingertips, right? It's such a great opportunity there.
Right. Yeah, that's why I always bring up that contrast, because I feel like in America and everywhere else in the world, you're really going to have to spread yourself thin doing YouTube and Twitch and content creation to get your name out, to get an income stream. Or in Japan, even doing content, I think would be easier. But on top of that, there's avenues for employment as a pro player with Street Fighter League, where employment doesn't really exist in other places in the world. So we're still in that infancy but the way I see it, unless something changes, which rumors are it might in other places in the world, but other than that, I see like a second talent drain occurring, where our best players end up moving to Japan. I can see a future where this starts happening.
It's very possible. I mean, I could, what they call Tokido the FG Scout, right? That's what they call him right now. So
got the birds.
They got the birds. I feel like Pug and Tokido, they have a great relationship. He might be like, hey, Pug, you want to be on Team Reject for next year for Street Fighter League Japan? I could see that as a possibility.
Yes, that's
I could see that as a possibility for sure. And if I was Pug, I would say yes in a heartbeat, if it's not a conflict of interest with FlyQuest or whatever, just because it's like, if you can spend a whole year in Japan playing for Street Fighter League, you're getting paid every episode, and like you're literally streaming from Japan playing all these best players, the amount of content he can get from it is like completely endless, and everyone will want to watch it.
Yes,
right. That's for
I'd love to watch it. Absolutely. Well, we'll see how that comes to be. I'm very interested in. I feel we're at a pivotal point again, another inflection point with the industry for Street Fighter esports, because things are growing in Japan, but everywhere else it's it's kind of stagnant right now. So I was interested to hear your perspective there.
I would say the only thing that really has it going outside of Japan is obviously the recent with Seijan Slam, right? Seijan Slam, it did such a great job with just connecting all these like people that didn't really play fighting games with like captains like yourself. You were on Sage and Slam as well. Like he did such a great job with that.
Yeah.
But that's only for Street Fighter, right? Obviously, he did for Tekken, but he's the only person that has something related to that. I think everyone else, they're just kind of doing their own thing, which is fine for sure. But I would say collabs or, like I said, just 15%. If you get 15% what Japan is doing, I think everyone would be completely happy. That's just how I see it.
Very true. Very true. Good perspective on that. I'll try to keep that in mind as well. Before we close this out, I want to tap into your knowledge of fighting games because I'm one of those people in my Street Fighter bubble, right? You're kind of one of the bridges I have to the rest of the fighting game world, really, when I watch your content and see what you're putting out there on YouTube and everything. So I wanted to understand your philosophy on this. Do you believe there is such thing as a scrubby fighting game? And across all the fighting games you played, if so, what is the scrubbiest game you have ever played?
Ooh, scrubbiest fighting game? Oh man.
Do you believe there is such a thing? Like, what is your philosophy on that to begin with? And if so, which one fits the bill the best?
I mean, there's obviously scrubby tendencies that a fighting game can have, right? Every game has something scrubby about it. But I think there are scrubby fighting games, like for sure. Like if I had to name one on the top of my head, I think Marvel 3 is scrubby. Yeah, I think Marvel
Okay.
3 is pretty scrubby with X Factor. Virgil's kind of a scrubby character as well too. The fact that you just swing and shit just works. Like I
Right.
think that's a pretty scrubby way. I think the beginning of Guilty Gear Strive Season 1 was pretty darn scrubby as well too. Obviously, game balance, they changed it. It's less scrubby at the time. I mean, talking to town, Tekken 8. Tekken 8 is a really scrubby game.
Uh-oh.
Actually. Dude, I know they have a new season with like defense is like the thing, but I think any game that prioritize that's what they said. I don't know. I didn't watch their Tekken talk.
Oh,
but I see people
you gotta
talk
see
about
the
it.
reactions.
But when Tekken 8 first came out, and once like how aggression is the key, it was pretty scrubby. I mean, you do a combo, you go into heat. Like every character had the same flow chart. You go to heat, right? You do a massive amount of chip damage. You put them in the corner. You spend your heat burst, and now it's guess who game. I feel like that's literally the story of Tekken 8. And a lot of people, I think the seasoned players can tell you this. Like, that's a very similar story that most rounds will probably happen and end. But I think the beginning of Tekken 8 was pretty darn scrubby for sure.
Interesting. You're sticking to mostly modern games. I expected to hear like some kind of ancient
modern game.
Well, listen, no, I'm not. Listen, let's pretend we're we've still got some spring in our step, okay, man? To me, Marvel 3 is still sparkling new.
So I think old games is defense was so strong back in old fighting games where there weren't enough mechanics in the game where offense was stronger. Now fighting games are made with lots of mechanics where offense is stronger. Because if you look at, let's say, you know how people had the argument on Twitter where like if Street Fighter 6 got rid of Drive Rush and Perfect Parry, it would be a good fighting game. Like I've seen people talk about that, and I'm like, no, it would just be literally an old ass game, and eventually there will be less people playing it because they can't get in and force their 50-50s.
Right.
That's what it would really be, because in that situation, if you can't just recklessly Drive Rush against somebody, then the person with the better fundamentals than you would just cook you every single time. It would kind of feel like Cross Tekken, where defense was so strong in Cross Tekken, and that's kind of how like now, where modern fighting games, you need some type of oppression in order for people to feel good about themselves playing in modern fighting games. But back in the day, if you lose in the fighting games, you can't blame anybody. It's just like, oh man, I really suck. Never got a chance. At least with now, if you lose, you're like, man, I was 150-50 away from winning this game.
That's true.
So I guess that's the biggest difference. So for me, a lot of modern fighting games would have to be more scrubbier than games back in the day.
Okay, I didn't expect this answer, even though I don't necessarily disagree. I just expected there to be something like some broken mess of a game from 1993 that some obscure developer put out that you would have played that was completely busted and scrubby. But
Okay, I mean,
I see your point.
There is fighting games that are completely busted, but I feel the thing is like I don't even think it's just scrubby. It's just usually only one character would be the scrubby part. It wouldn't be the full
Right.
game. If a game is scrubby, it has to be like a mechanic that makes every character play kind of in a in a scrubby way.
Okay.
And it really comes down to heating, just activating heat in Tekken. It's pretty scrubby because it just gives you so much plus frames and so much offense opportunities where defense just has to hold that shit. Pretty much, I really do think it's just more modern fighting game tendencies to be more scrubby than older games.
You're allowed to get away with this because you're Justin Wong. I hope you know that.
I think people would agree with me though.
Some people will. Some people will let it pass because they'll counter evil wins and be like, all right, you get a pass.
I mean, I just look at Twitter and I see that literally 99% of people are complaining about what I'm saying. But when I look at like the little discords or the fightcades, they don't really complain about the old broken stuff. I think it's because maybe they accepted it because it's an old ass game and there's no way you will get a update for these old ass games. Because even if you look at Third Strike, people can tell you like you might not have too much experience playing Third Strike, Brian, but you know that Chun, Yun are the two broken characters in the game.
Right.
Right. But they don't say they're scrubby. They just say they're broken. Right. It's because there's not enough mechanics in the game that makes the character really scrubby. They're just top tier because there's not enough mechanics to stop them from being top tier.
Right. That makes sense. I do agree there's a difference between broken and scrubby. Also, some characters are scrubby but low tier. That's definitely a thing. Like there's a clear difference between top tier broken and scrubby. I definitely agree there. But I would also say maybe that's survivor bias, right? Whoever survived in Fightcade they're committed for life, whatever it may be.
True.
And then when a game is popular, like listen, if Third Strike was released today, dude, do you not think the complaint would be insane? It would
be the same, but I don't think the meta would have changed at all. It would still be the same. Because even now, people are still figuring out like stuff, and well, even now, with Japan Third Strike being so popular, like we talk about how Street Fighter 6 is so popular in Japan, where I think Daigo's recent tournament they had like over 1,000 players in that 3v3. Third Strike has that as well too. Even to this day, where they have all these 5v5 teams in Cooperation Cup, and they're having like 1,000 people tournaments, like that's still a thing. Even this most recent weekend, they had a Fists of North Star Hakuto no Ken, big world like nationwide tournament, and that's a broken ass game. I wouldn't say it's scrubby, but it's a broken ass game, and
it's the broken game.
Yeah, it's the broken game, and people still come out, they still grind, they still play that game. So it's just, yeah, I don't, it's just broken. Old games are broken. They're just not scrubby. I think.
Got you.
It's Sanford said it. It's scrubby. Like Super Fight, it's scrubby. Right, but I don't think it's broken.
I see. Interesting. I agree with a lot of that perspective for sure. I'm not sure if we wouldn't hear the same complaints if those old games were new today. I think humans just like to complain, and I think a lot of what we see is just the numbers game. This is the price we pay for fighting games being more popular. It's just part of the game. I do have one final game question for you. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think is the greatest fighting game of all time? But I'm going to give you 3 categories, so hopefully make it easier. The greatest fighting game ever for casual play, the greatest fighting game for competitive play, and the greatest fighting game to spectate. So that way you can break it out. You can repeat the same game if it fits the categories, but to me, I feel like it's easier to break it out into those different categories.
All right. Let's see. The greatest game for casual play. And you said the greatest game for competitive play and the greatest game for spectate.
Yeah.
All right. The greatest game for competitive play, it's really hard to argue with it. I personally love Street Fighter 6. I think Street Fighter 6 is it a state where everyone is so close to the skill level that it's a really good competitive game. And I would say the best spectate game, man, Capcom Cup was really good to watch. It was like my eyes were glued the whole time during Capcom Cup. It's so hard because I do think it's a toss up between Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8
Mm.
for best spectate game.
You think ever though of those two, even of past generations, or is that just because of the tournament formats and the stakes?
I think it's the players that they make the matches more exciting. Because I play so much older games and everything like that, but I never felt that thrill of, like, I would say people competitively playing and also watching compared to, like, when I compare it to Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8. So I think for Street Fighter 6, for me, it's the best competitive game because it's kind of like the amount of mechanics that they have in this game where it just revolves around drive system. You have to think about so much things besides character matchup and player matchup. You have to think about just like kind of like the use of like meter management and not even just your super, right? It's just your drive gauge management because that's like that. I will say that's more of your lifeline than the actual health itself. So the amount of different play styles that you can kind of incorporate in terms of just like, are you going to be a person that is a person that fishes for perfect parries, or are you a person that's going to try to be a whiff punish person, or are you going to be a madman that just drive rushes every single time? Are you good at using drive reversals at the perfect opportunity? Are you going to force yourself on a burnout because you have no choice? Like all those decisions being made in Street Fighter 6 is like really good. I think it's at the best competitive place currently at the moment, especially with this past Capcom Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm gonna say Tekken 8 for me is the best spectate because watching Pakistan versus Korea last week was really really good because of
Right.
I think between the storyline of Pakistan and Korea is the best storyline in FGC at the moment.
Mm.
Obviously, you have the Blaz storyline and everything like that, but before Blaz, there was no Street Fighter 6 storyline. I felt like I think the storyline for Street Fighter 6 didn't really exist until Capcom Cup happened, and everyone from the South America region just kind of like hooked that tournament. Like I
Right.
think a lot of people kind of like. I know you obviously did your series of like what players are should we watch out for, but I think most people would like they didn't think that Blas was going to do well, or they didn't think
Right.
Salvatore was going to beat Punk, or they, stuff like that. A lot of people just thought like the easy favorites would easily win the tournament and everything like that. And Capcom Cup did such a great job with that. But when you think about storylines that's been there since the previous game, that
Mm.
was Pakistan versus Korea, right? So I
Yeah.
think for me, I'm more invested in the storyline of like Pakistan versus Korea because like Pakistan, I think Arslan Ash was like the GOAT of Tekken 7, right? Tekken 8 came out, he didn't do so well in the start, but then he won Evo. But then Korea won eSports World Cup. Then
Yep.
Korea won Tekken World Tour Finals, right? So now Pakistan came down as a force. Literally all the players came down from the Korea to play in this like long ass like round robin set, and Pakistan won. And it wasn't just Arslan or Atif that carried. It was No Man and the John, like people
Right.
that they probably didn't expect to carry actually carried. So I think that was the best so far. That's currently the best spectate for me. So I would say Tekken 8 is the best spectate. Street Fighter 6 is the best competitive. Casual, casual is kind of hard because I feel like casual. If you have to compare the current active player base, then Street Fighter 6 would be number one for best casual. But if in my heart, I'm gonna say Marvel 3.
Marvel
I'm gonna
3.
say I'm gonna say Marvel 3 in my
Let's
heart
go.
because I think it's one of the only games where if you wanted to play at an event, I'm going to sit there. I would love to sit and play hours with you, that
Right.
type of thing. Well, I feel like if I was casually playing at a venue playing Street Fighter 6, I might get up after 5 games.
Right.
right? So,
You're gonna be
I think
burnt.
Marvel 3, yeah, I'm gonna be
Street Fighter
burnt,
6
like literally
fries
burnt.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too much stuff and a lot of risk, a lot of like different decisions are being made. While Marvel 3, even if you're not on your game, your muscle memory, the flow chart will just take over, and you're still having a fun time. And it's a broken ass game, and I think both people know you can't be mad at just getting, like, I would say, Virgil or whatever. While Street Fighter 6, if you get hit by, if you didn't check the drive rush, you're gonna get mad,
Yes.
right? While Marvel 3, you don't really get mad at playing Marvel 3. So I'm gonna say Marvel 3 is the best casual game.
I agree. I think Marvel 3 is I never played the game competitively like that, but that was always my favorite spectator game, my favorite casual game. I think it's beautiful. The moment you open it, the opening cutscenes, the music, the graphics, the character select screen, the roster. To me, Marvel 3 is the greatest fighting game of all time. I would never compete in it. Ever. But everything else around it, I think, is like that is the gold standard for fighting games. I definitely preach the gospel of MBC 3.
What is your top three in those regards? Like best spectate, best competitive, best. And you probably mentioned best casual. I guess best casual would be Marvel 3 maybe for you.
Yes, best casual would be Marvel 3. I think spectate would be between Marvel 3 and Tekken for me as a series, just because I think they're the best casual fighting games. But for me personally, I still have to go Marvel 3. But I recognize Tekken has the best appeal universally. Just because it just looks so visceral and it's so easy to follow.
Yeah.
But competitively, I can't say Street Fighter 6. I can't.
You can't.
I don't agree with your logic on that. To me, that sounds like the opposite. What you described to me describes the opposite of what makes a good competitive game. To me, a good competitive game is a very stable competitive environment where there's less variability. That to me is what's a good competitive game.
So what would you choose then?
Maybe I would put 4 or 5 above 6 if I had to choose between the Street Fighters.
5.
If I had to choose from the Street Fighter series, yeah, I liked Endgame 5 a lot. I think Endgame 5, it
took you a while
spots.
to get to Endgame 5. That's the problem. It took a while to get there.
Yeah, it was bad up front.
But you got to think about this, right? 5 eventually became a Luke fest, and then Street Fighter 4 became of a Leda fest. I guess right now Street Fighter 6 doesn't really have that at the moment. Even though you say there's all these Kens, but
it's not like that.
None of these Kens, none of these Kens really showed up.
Yeah, I guess you could argue Street Fighter 6. Street Fighter 6 has so much going for it, though. It has the international competitive base, the formats, the tour, the $1 million. That does all bring it to another level. I do have concerns about some of the mechanics of the game, like you mentioned before. So, that's a tough one. Now I realize how hard the question is. Maybe it'd have to be a Tekken game then. I really love the aspect of having the game be consistent for so long, where you can have these legacy storylines. And I kind of like from a distance these legacy mechanic things where it's not reset over and over every couple of years. So I'd probably go with a Tekken, actually. Maybe not a Tekken 8, like a Tekken 7 or 7? Earlier. Yeah, maybe. Because those are things that I value competitively. But I understand that doesn't make the best spectating experience or the best playing experience, which I think is where Tekken 7 would have suffered, was casual play, right? So I think Street Fighter 6 to me is probably the best all-around game ever for those things. But I'd maybe give it like a Tekken, some prime Tekken entry for best competitive game. Because I value those things competitively, personally. All right, Justin. I think that about wraps up all I had for you. Do you have any closing thoughts for the people before we close this out?
No, just thank you for having me. It was really fun. I really enjoy watching the trash talks, especially with the Punk episode was really, really good. So I hope you keep doing more of these, and I hope you get like bigger names. Like, what if you get like a Tokido or a Daigo in the future, or stuff like that. I think that would be really fun to watch, just because I think you ask really good questions, and also your flow of conversation is also really awesome.
Well, thank you. We'll see. Those are big targets to aim for. We'll see if we get there one day. Well, Justin, thanks again for coming on. I know this was a super busy time. I think you might have to go react to Cristiano Ronaldo appearing.
I did that earlier. I did that earlier before I came on. But
there we go.
It's a busy week just because we came back recently from Osaka. But I know we were trying to plan this for a few weeks now.
Right. It's glad to finally have that conversation. All right, Justin, thanks so much for hopping on, and thanks everyone for listening. Peace. And that concludes this episode of Trash Talk. At the end here, I just want to take a moment to thank our supporters over at patreon.com/Brian_F. Your support is what makes this show possible. It allows us to give each episode the proper research, time to source the guests, and editing it needs to get it right. So once again, thank you. You should be seeing your name scrolling by on the screen right now. If you'd like to see your name scrolling by right now, support the show, and get early access to these premium episodes, please go ahead and head over to patreon.com/Brian_F. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're a Patreon member or just supporting the show by listening. We appreciate you so much. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.